Hello everybody, it's Bendominator and welcome back to a brand new video. In today's video, we're going to be ranking every single Fortnite live event. Since the Chapter 3 end event is coming very soon, in about a week here, I thought I might as well go back and reflect on all the past live events and just rank them completely, starting with the Rocket event. This was huge for Fortnite. This was like a big thing at the very beginning because this is the first ever live event that we ever actually had, and it's definitely one of the most influential. But I feel like it hasn't really stood the test of time too well. We've seen a lot of events that are better than it, but I think as like the first live event, it was pretty good, and it was pretty revolutionary, not only for Fortnite, but for gaming as a whole. Nothing like this had ever really been done before, so I'm gonna go ahead and put this in the B tier. Next up, we have a few other smaller events that I feel like barely count as live events, but they did technically exist, with the queue being formed, which I might actually put in B tier as well, mostly because this was kind of one of the only instances where we saw an event happen in real time. It wasn't really a big event at all, but this one and the previous one, this one wasn't even expected at all, so it was really big to see, and like people's reaction to it was really crazy. So I'm gonna put this in B tier as well. It's not very impressive, especially looking back now, but I feel like we haven't really seen anything like it since, where like something completely unexpected, without like any rumors or like foreshadowing at all, just happens. And I feel like it's kind of impossible due to the state of leaking now. If anything, if they try to do anything like this, leakers would be able to predict it, so I'm guessing that's why they don't do it. But it was just really cool to see something random just appear, just have Kevin randomly appear on the map with no foreshadowing, no hinting, no ideas to like what was gonna happen. People didn't even know there was gonna be a live event, so I think that was really cool. We also have this, but this was kind of like the same level, but it was expected. People expected it. There was a lot of foreshadowing towards Kevin going into the lake. It was cool that the lake became bouncy, but I don't think it's really that impressive. But it was still kind of cool. Then we have the actual cube event with like the butterfly event. I think at the time this was really cool, but thinking back on it now, like nothing really happened. We went into the cube, we had the butterfly thing happen, we came back, and then like loot lake changed again for like what I think was the third time by this point, third or fourth time, so it wasn't really that exciting thinking back on it, but I think it would belong in B tier, maybe just below these other two. Then we had our first concert event with Marshmallow. I feel pretty similar about most of the concert events in this game, pretty much all of them. I don't really care about any of the artists that are featured in them. I think the events were fine. This one I feel like is kind of a C tier. I think it was okay. For the first one it was cool, but I don't think it was really anything too special. Then we have the Ice King event, which was kind of a big bummer, I think. It was cool to see the map covered in snow, but we had already seen it, I think, previously when we had the Christmas event, so I don't think it was really anything actually too crazy there either. There was quite a bit of build up to this one too, and I feel like people had pretty high expectations for it, and nothing really happened with it, so I'm going to go ahead and put this in C tier as well. Then we had the Invaulting event, which I think was pretty cool. I unfortunately did not attend this one. This is one of the few events I did not attend. I attended pretty much all these other ones, except for the Invaulting. And yeah, this one was, it was kind of cool. I think it was cool that we kind of got to, the community kind of got to pick what to unvault. I don't think a lot of people were happy with the drum gun coming back, but I think it was kind of cool. And then the volcano at the end, but it destroyed Tilted, which I think was one of the worst decisions. I get that it had to happen at some point, but I really was not a fan of that. And honestly, like Tilted Towers was one of those things where I definitely see how a lot of people can find Tilted overrated or overhyped, but Tilted Towers for me is one of those things that just, whenever it's in the game just feels better, you know, for some reason. Like when it came back in Chapter 3, that was huge for me. I don't know, I just love Tilted, and it's not even a place that like I used to drop a lot. I don't know, I think it's just very iconic, and I feel like removing Tilted was kind of not great for that, and I kind of have a grudge against this event for having that happen, but besides that, I think it was pretty cool. I'm going to put it just below the Rocket. I think I'll put it below this event. Oh wait, I didn't mean to do that. This event, the Cube event, was definitely not as impressive, but just the sheer like shock of it is just so memorable, which is why I kind of have it higher here. But you'll see that a lot of these events, we haven't seen like an A tier event, but that's about to change because we have the mech versus monster. I didn't attend this event either, but I think this was a really cool one. I watched videos on it like after the fact, and I was just blown away. Like, this event was absolutely insane. There was like the fight was insane, the absolute like scale of it. I think the only problem that I would really have against this event is that we didn't really see the map change after the fact. This seemed like an event that would actually change the map quite a bit, but we actually didn't see much change. And the only reason I'm not putting in S tier is because I think there's a few events that are a little bit better than it, but I do think that this was a really memorable event. Even as someone who didn't attend it, I think, I still have memories of first watching it, like, just from a YouTube video, which goes to show, like, even if you weren't there, actually, like, seeing it, I think, was still really, really cool. Then you have the New Year's thing. This isn't really special. We see this every single year. I do think it's cool, but I don't think it's really that crazy, so I'm going to put it at the bottom of C tier. Then we have the first Chapter 1 end event, which I think is going to be the first S tier event, in my opinion. This was super impactful. It was a crazy event. We had a bunch of lead up to it. We had the rocket, we had the meteor, the 0 point was exposed, and like the stakes were extremely high. The music was incredible. This is the first event where I actually kind of like heard the music and it stood out. I feel like most of these events didn't really have music up until the Mech vs. Monster, if I remember correctly. Well, obviously the Marshmallow concert had music, but most of these were like silent events, which I think was cool in their own right, and I think it would be interesting to return to a time where the events didn't have backing music, because they weren't as cinematic before they were kind of just like more kind of, I guess more grounded in reality. Like the rocket, the fact that the rocket event didn't have music, I think elevates it, because it's a lot more eerie. It's a lot more like, oh, what is happening? It had like ambience, you know, it didn't have music. But I think events like the end really are elevated because of the music. So it's kind of an interesting thing. And now every single event has music no matter what. I think it'd be interesting to see some events nowadays that don't have music. Because I think some of these smaller events really too are elevated by it. But the end event's music was great. I think that the end event in general was amazing. The black hole part of it, not so much, but I don't really consider that part of the live event. But overall, I think the end was really, really good, and a really good way to end Chapter 1. Then we have the Star Wars live event, which is going to be the first D tier. This was barely a live event. This is pretty much the equivalent of what they would put in Party Royale. It's really not anything special. And yeah, it was just kind of boring. It was just kind of boring. I thought the intro sequence was really cool, where you saw the Millennium Falcon flying around and all that kind of stuff. That was awesome. And that's kind of what I expected for the whole event, but then it kind of just went into a bunch of advertising for the upcoming movie, so yeah, wasn't really a huge fan of that. Then we have the Travis Scott one, which is interesting because I don't know, I don't really like Travis Scott, but I do have to commend the Fortnite team for the visual effects on this concert. I think they did an amazing job with the visuals of it, and I think it was probably one of the most stunning events visually. But besides that, not really a fan, so I think I'm just gonna put it right above the Marshmallow concert. Again, visually it was great, but I didn't really like anything else about it. Then we have the Device event, which this may be the most unpopular opinion, but I think this is by far the best event in the game. Like, I honestly, the hype leading up to this was incredible. I feel like it's one of the few events that actually really paid off on the next season. I feel like a lot of these events, like, capped off their seasons really well, but didn't really pay off. Like, even the end event, I feel like Chapter 2's launch was great, but Chapter 2 quickly kind of got boring for a lot of people, so I feel like the end of Chapter 1 didn't pay off in a good enough way. But the end of the Device event, where you have the flood coming in and the giant water storm, not only did we have the water storm, which is great, but we also had it seamlessly move into Chapter 2 Season 3. Which I think is really important for these events to kind of seamlessly move the story from one season to another, and it's extremely rare when that happens for some reason. So I think the Device event was one of the few that was actually able to seamlessly bridge the gap between one season to another. So I thought that was really impressive, and I thought that they did some really good work with not only the visuals, but the music was outstanding. I think it's the best piece of Fortnite soundtrack we have ever heard. And honestly, I just really have really good memories with this event. I have really good memories during this time in Fortnite, and I think that this was probably the best event we'd ever seen. And it was the last of its kind, because ever since this event, we have moved on to where I feel like the events have kind of fallen off a little bit. And I'll explain why here, starting with the Galactus event. I think the Galactus event was a good A-tier event. I do not think that the defeat of Galactus was satisfying, especially because of how much build-up we had to Galactus, but I think visually it was really cool. It was a fun time, but it introduced something that I've really started to dislike about Fortnite events, and that is the fact that a lot of these events now, pretty much every single one of them, is fully interactive, which may sound like a weird complaint to a lot of people, but I really miss the days of Fortnite events when you were just simply a bystander, because I feel like it was a lot more impactful. The focus wasn't on you, it was on the island and what was happening on the island. And I think that was a lot more interesting than being like the main protagonist, because when you are the one who is kind of in the event and you're going through it, it really doesn't feel like anything special anymore. It feels like your average video game event. Any story-based video game like sequence, it doesn't feel special. It just feels like any story-based video game would. But like with the old events, you were just a bystander. You were seeing these things happen to the island as you were standing back on a ground level, and it was a lot more impactful because you kind of felt like you were in danger along with the island. Especially in events like Mech vs. Monster, where you could really see the scale of it. The device event, where you could really see, like, you were being affected by the device. You were being, like, teleported around. You were, like, experiencing, like, low gravity and all this kind of stuff. The end event, like, you were getting sucked in the black hole, all that kind of stuff. It's like, you're just seeing these things happen, and you're just a bystander, a witness. But in these events, like, they try to put you in the main character role, and I just don't think it makes it feel special anymore, and it doesn't really elevate the stakes as much, so that's kind of where I put Galactus in the A tier, because I think the intro was great. I think Galactus walking up to the helicarrier was amazing. It had amazing music, it was extremely ominous, but then you go into like the battle bus flying sequence and you kind of lose me there. And then you have this event, which was a fully interactive event. This wasn't even live, it was a preseason event, and while I thought it had some cool, it had like a cool cinematic at the beginning, I feel like overall this one was kind of just a little boring, and I'd probably put it in B tier. Maybe, yeah, it had cool visuals, so probably above the Unvaulting, but I don't think it was really anything special. Then you have the Ariana Grande concert, which I think is the worst concert we've seen so far. Of course, like, it's definitely more visually impressive than Marshmallows, but I don't think it was as visually interesting as the Travis Scott one, and I just really was not a fan of it because of the fact that, again, it was more interactive. You weren't a bystander, you were kind of going through these worlds, which I could see how people would like, but in my opinion, it just wasn't interesting. It didn't feel interesting. I would have preferred if this concert took place on the Fortnite map itself. I think removing the event from the Fortnite map was its biggest mistake, because I think when events take place on the map itself, it's a lot more impactful. And it's strange that a lot of these events just didn't. Like, the Galactus one took place mostly in space, and it's like, I feel like, why have a Fortnite event if it's not going to actually take place on the island? I think the most impactful parts of the Galactus event were when you were on the island, when you were seeing him rip out the 0 point from the Earth. That was really, really cool. So I wish we saw more stuff like that. Next up, like Skyfire event, for example. Most of this event takes place in a UFO. You're barely ever on the map. The only time you see the map is at the end, and it didn't even really have any consequences on the next season. So it's like, I don't know. I really don't like it when the Fortnite events take you away from the island, because I feel like the island should always be the focal point of these events. So I don't know, but I'm kind of mixed on this one, because while Skyfire has a lot of the issues that I have with current Fortnite events, I thought it had some really good moments. Actually, I thought it had some really great moments. I think having Sloan turn on us, well, it was kind of predictable. It was really, really cool. Having the cube come back, being like seeing how many cubes there were was really, really interesting, but it just didn't really lead into the next season very well. So while it had cool visuals, it had cool music, it suffers from a lot of the problems that I have with recent live events, but it had some really great moments. So I'll put it about right here. Then we have the end event, and it just makes me sad to also say that, well, technically, yes, the Imposters map is like on the island. It's like in between the maps, and it was kind of cool to go through it, but it's like, most of this event, again, doesn't even take place on the map. It's supposed to be the end of the Chapter 2 map, and we don't even really get to see it get destroyed. Like, we see it from, like, such a distance that you can't even tell what you're looking at. Like, you see the island flip, which I think was great, but I think it would have been a lot cooler to see that, like, up close and personal, and I understand how that may be very difficult to do on a technical level, and obviously they don't want us to see the other side of the map yet, but I don't know. I really think that the flipping, while it was cool, we don't really get to see the map kind of get destroyed like we did with the initial end event. Not to mention, a lot of this, like, event is a cinematic, a CGI cinematic, and that's just not really fun. Like, it was cool to watch, but, like, what's the point of it being a live event if they're just gonna play a cinematic? So it's like, I don't know, like, the first part was like you were fighting zombies, which is kind of cool, but it kind of just felt like, I don't know, nothing too crazy was happening. I like the visuals of, like, the rift in the sky opening up to, like, reveal, like, the last reality and stuff. I think that was cool. But then you go into the cinematic. The cinematic's cool, but not really what I come to a live event for. And then you have running through the imposters map, which is kind of boring because, like, it's the imposters map. I understand there's stakes going on, but, like, I don't know, I'm just not a huge fan. And then you go out and you see the island flip, which is probably the peak of the event. It's probably the best part, but that part was also spoiled for me, but I'm not going to hold that against the event. I think that was still a cool moment. But still, I don't know. I think it kind of failed to be a good send-off to Chapter 2, and I don't really see it as a great Chapter 2 send-off. It kind of just felt like another event from Chapter 2. And I would even say Skyfire is probably better. So, yeah. And then you have the collision, which not only does it, like, rehash the whole mech idea, but I feel like it does it so much worse. Piloting the mech was just not interesting to me. I want to see the stuff again. I want to be able to see the stuff from a ground level. I think it would have been a lot cooler to see the mech fighting off against, like, the Zeppelins and the blimps and the tanks from a ground level. I think that would have been a lot more impactful. And while this event did fix my issue of, like, a lot of the events not actually taking place on the island, which is good for being the 1 and 2 events that we're getting for Chapter 3, it just, I don't know, it wasn't interesting to me. It felt like your average video game cutscene with just, like, QuickTime events. And I don't know, it didn't seem like something that needed to happen live. And I think that's one of the biggest factors in these live events is, like, you have to wonder, why are these events live? And a lot of these make a lot of sense. But you have stuff like the collision and Skyfire, and it's like, technically these didn't need to be live events. They could just happen, like, whenever. These are so scripted. Like, everything's scripted, but these are so, like, on rails. Like, you don't really have any choice in where you go or what you do. You're just going along with it, and it's just like, I don't know. I really feel like a lot of these just didn't leave an impact, and I'm gonna say that the collision was probably the weakest event we've seen in a while, and I would say it's probably about, like, on par with the Ice King event. Like, I understand there was a lot more work put into it, there was a lot more storyline, but none of it really hit for me. None of it hit for me, but none of it left an impact. And it didn't really, like, seamlessly go into the next season either. It set up stuff that never got resolved. So yeah, overall, I think it was kind of just disappointing. And yeah, that's kind of where I'm at for live events. But I do think we have had some really solid ones. But overall, live events are a cool part of Fortnite. There's something I usually look forward to. I'm interested to see what they do with the end event for this season. I feel like it could be really different. It could be really unique. We've seen a lot of kind of rumors going around about how it's going to be, which I may talk about in an upcoming video, but I'm excited. I'm interested. But I don't know. I feel like I've kind of been let down by live events as of recent. Mostly just due to my particular taste and what I look for in a live event. Of course, this is all just my opinion, and I understand that my takes may be unpopular within the community, because I feel like I have a very specific idea of what Fortnite live events should be, and I feel like Fortnite live events have kind of shifted away from what they used to be, at least in my opinion. But let me know, what do you guys think about the Fortnite live events? What is your favorite event? How would you rank these? Let me know in the comment section below. And yeah, if you guys enjoy this video, be sure to give it a thumbs up, subscribe if you are new, because I make videos like this all the time. And you can also use my supporter creator code Bendominator in the Fortnite item shop #ad. Thank you guys so much for watching. Have a great rest of your day, and goodbye.